Nick, give us the elevator pitch for Fanatics Live. How would you describe the platform to someone who's never heard of it before?
So think of Fanatics Live as the place where card collecting meets entertainment. And I think, if you've never been in this space before, I'd kind of point you to, QVC on cable TV, where people would go and participate in live commerce. I think I would point you at Twitch, where communities come to meet. And then I would point you at the kind of gamification of Candy Crush. Bring all that together, and it's really about how do you create an exciting experience where people can chat in real time, they can get excited together when rare cards are pulled, and they stick around because it's fun and it's not just transactional. It's kind of like the digital version of what collectors have always loved, sharing the thrill of the hobby with people who just get it, people like them.
Amazing. Well, I'm really keen to dive into the details of it. Let's just take a step back. How does this fit into the broader Fanatics ecosystem?
Yeah, so Fanatics, started as an e-commerce business, really known for its merchandise. If you speak to people, particularly in the US, if they've ever bought a jersey from their favorite team, or they've bought sort of merchandise to celebrate a win of a championship, and they probably purchased it through Fanatics. So that was the original business. Since then, over the last few years, we've expanded into betting and gaming, and we've expanded into collectibles. And Fanatics Live is part of the collectibles organization. So the collectibles organization is, a business based around the production, the marketing of trading cards. And, we obviously have licenses in many, many sports, from MLB to WWE to UFC, with the Premier League coming soon in the UK, with NBA coming soon, with NFL coming soon. So Fanatics is really about how do we just relentlessly enhance the fan experience, give fans of their team the really take that passion and let them get closer to the things that they really care about. And Fanatics Live is really the live commerce element of our collectibles business. So I think what we were seeing is that people wanted to get closer to the things that they cared about. Traditionally, they'll have gone into the hobby shops, and that sense of community existed there. But as e-commerce grew in the sector, we wanted to take everything that was great about going into your local hobby shop and hanging around with like-minded people, opening cards together, and bring that into a digital world. So you can do it 24/7, 365 days a year, wherever you are in the world.
And why do you think that it's such a compelling format, this live shopping, compared to just more traditional e-commerce or marketplace?
I think that's a great question. I mean, live commerce has grown incredibly rapidly in China over the last 10 years. So I think the last stat I read was about 20 to 25% of all transactions that happen in China now occur through live commerce. But I think when it comes to collectibles, I would really look at it as like the difference between watching a sports game alone at home versus being in a packed stadium with other fans. When you're buying on a regular website, it's kind of just clicking buttons. It feels kind of like a utility. And I often say to our team, people are buying something they really care about. They're not buying toilet paper. So how do we make that exciting? How do we make that so that they feel like they're a part of the experience? And it's kind of pretty fascinating. If you look at Fanatics Live, we have over an hour a day watch time on average. So wow. They're not just buying, they're hanging out. That the kind of the social element is just transforming shopping from being a chore or a utility, as I said, into entertainment. And I think there's no better moment than when you're in a room on Fanatics Live and someone pulls a rare card and everyone experiences that moment together. The excitement that's going on, fire emojis all over the screen. And that shared excitement is something that you just can't get when you're kind of scrolling through product listings on a website.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to talk about the UK launch as well for your flagship store. But before we get into that, can you share how the UK audience is different to the US audience?
I think it's interesting. Trading cards is part of, the US fabric, right? And, as you've guessed by my accent, I was born in the UK. And I think, grew up collecting soccer stickers. The got need kind of vocabulary of the playground was the whole of our kind of summer to Christmas term, right? It was like the album would come out, you buy the album, and then you'd buy trading cards with your friends to complete the album. And I think, it's really about the psychology of collecting. I have a 5-year-old son, and it's been pretty interesting to watch him grow into a collector. That started very early in life. he started collecting special things and putting them on his bookshelf at home. We never told him to do that, but it was, the rock he found in the garden or the shell that he found at the beach. And those were his special things. And I think it's interesting. I think this, the spirit of a collector is in everybody. And I think, as that pairs with the fandom of sport, I think it's really, really interesting. But I think what's interesting as a difference from my perspective, obviously, being deeply involved in the hobby in the US and having been a collector in the UK is that, the concept of collecting stickers is about set completion. You buy the album, you try to collect the stickers. I found a few of my sticker albums when I went home to my parents' house recently, and, they're all kind of stuck in a little off center. It's kind of not a perfect collection. And I think what's different about trading cards, and I think what's going to be exciting as more people in the UK get into trading cards is the fact that these things live on for a very long time. People build their collections for years and years and years. Collecting is this kind of journey that you go on over a long period of time, and you may start by buying as a child some of the kind of retail product with the kind of more affordable price point, but over time, as people get more disposable income and as they get more involved in the hobby, that kind of elevates. And, what we're seeing in the US and we have seen for a number of years now is that, the trading cards become a form of art, right? And I think it's interesting. People collect wine, they collect cars, they collect watches, and they collect trading cards. And, if you look at some of the recent sales that we've had on our Fanatics collect marketplace, recently a Paul Skeens debut patch sold for over $1 million, $1.1 million. And I think that just kind of shows the kind of breadth of collecting. And I think we're excited to obviously launch the Premier League later this year, launch the trading cards of the Premier League later this year. And I think, if you've been to the UK store, you get a chance to go to the UK store, you'll really see that this is a very elevated experience. And this offers the opportunity for 5-year-olds like my son or, 55-year-old to get involved and really be a part of something, be a part of a community and be a part of fandom.
Amazing. I remember those days well myself, sticking the football stickers in the album, and my 10-year-old son is doing that to this day. I'm really curious, why did you choose the UK to launch your first flagship store?
So I think if you look at the US, we have over 900 local card stores. As I said, the trading cards is part of the fabric of the US. If I speak to anybody on the street, they'll say, oh, I've got a collection. And I think what's really interesting is that often it's, the first bonding moment between particularly sons and their dads, right, in the US. The dad gives them something to really gel and bond with their child over. And I think what's interesting about the UK is that sort of network of local card shops didn't exist. So we thought putting a flagship in London would kind of really set the standard and the benchmark for what collecting is about. And we hope to see many other stores in the UK pop up.
I love it. Well, I was gutted to miss out on the launch, but I saw some of the videos and Lewis Hamilton was there, and it looks like a lovely space. I'm also keen to talk to you about creators as well, and I know that they're the heart of Fanatics Live. Can you sort of explain how creators interact on the platform and how they earn and make money?
Yeah, so, I've got a pretty deep background in creators. I spent 5.5 years at Snap, and, creators were obviously very much at the center of what Snapchat's about. And I think what's interesting for us is every creator is different, and the creators on the platform are entrepreneurs as well. I think if you look at kind of traditional social media, creators were trying to monetize via advertising. And that is somewhat dictated by how large your audience is. And I think therefore content starts to go into the direction of what gets views rather than necessarily what builds community, particularly as you look at how, algorithms are built into these platforms today. You can get somebody who can post one video and get 20 million likes, and they'll post the next video and get 20 million views, and the next video they get 20 views. Where I think on Fanatics Live, it's really about building audience. It's about building that community. I think if you speak to collectors who use Fanatics Live on a daily basis, they'll have their 2 or 3 favorite creators, and it's not just the creator that they sort of move towards and are attracted by. It's the community that forms around that. So, we have some creators on the platform who are very deep, sports orientated. And then you have other creators on the platform who, are focused on Star Wars. And then there's a spectrum in between of some who, go very deep on the stats, go very deep on, the kind of tactical aspects of sport when they're kind of presenting. And there's others who are just pure forms of entertainment. And I think, what we've seen is that these creators are coming, they're finding their audience, they're building that audience, they're building that community, and they have people coming back day after day after day. And, when we do events with these creators, these are the celebrities of these folks' lives. They get mobbed. People feel like they know them. They're spending, as I mentioned, like an hour plus a day in these channels. And these are people that are their friends, and then the community around them are people that they know very, very well. It's like, people putting stickers on with their usernames and going up to each other and embracing and sharing the stories about the card that they hit a few weeks ago. So it really is a place where people are coming and spending their time and, hanging out with like-minded people. I think if you look at it as a business, I think what's really interesting about that is, it really comes down to how do you build that bond with your audience, and how do you make sure that people are coming back day after day after day? And I think that entertainment value also turns into a business, right? The ability to easily buy, the ability to participate in the products that the creators are talking about and opening live on stream, it just creates a very, very strong business as well.
Yeah. And I'm intimately familiar with things like YouTube Studio. What sort of tools do you offer creators on the platform?
Yeah, so we have, a benefit that, from early stage, we decided that, we were going to go kind of an inch wide and a mile deep around the vertical of trading cards. So we have a studio, we call it Live OS, and Live OS is purpose built for the collectibles industry. So, we have tools and features and services that are really geared towards helping creators be successful and be entertaining, right? We want it to be very, very easy for creators to actually, sell breaks, run giveaways, run, polls and quizzes. And, it's a very, very gamified experience, but, it was all built through the lens of trading cards. So, rather than other platforms that go much wider and have to cater for selling handbags or, selling electronics, we're very, very focused on trading cards. So I think when you come to Fanatics Live, what you'll see is an experience that's been tailored both for creator and for the fan around the vertical of trading cards.
And is there an algorithm like, something like YouTube or Snap, or how do you select the creators to feature?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the heart of our product, one of our core values is trust and safety, right? I think we want to make sure that if you come on and you participate in a stream and you buy into a product, then you know that you're going to get a sort of first-class service, right? So we took the approach early on to have a highly curated platform. We said early on that we want to work with the best. We kind of liken it to cable TV in that regard, right? We want to have creators who all they do is build a great business around trading cards. And I think that's meant that we've had a very focused approach on being able to handpick and select the best entertainers, the best creators in the space. So, that's allowed those folks to build significant audiences, and again, creates those kind of repeat views day after day. And we're taking a similar approach in the UK. Obviously, the US market today is much more mature and, and kind of, further along the kind of path. But, what we're seeing from the early stages in the UK is that it's going to be a very fast follow. We acquired a business in France last year, Vogt, which is the leading live commerce business in France and Germany. And I think, that's given us a lot of insights into, how to think about an international rollout. And the UK is our second market for Fanatics Live, and we're super excited to be there.
Great. And you mentioned that focus on trading cards. Like, where do you see Fanatics Live in 3 to 5 years? Do you think it'll go much wider into different types of products, and where might we be?
Yeah, we listen to our fans every single day, and there's definitely been, a push from some of our fans to get into adjacent categories. Right now we're very, very focused on trading cards. We think there is a lot more we can do there. We've got a lot of exciting stuff planned, and I think for us, it's about how do you create a kind of connected ecosystem where people can come in, they can learn about the packs they're opening, and they can see, the hits that are in the packs. They can view the checklist to see what's in that particular product. They can, build a collection, a digital collection. So every time they hit cards, they can see that their cards within a collection. They can buy, sell, and trade other cards that other collectors have hit. And I think from that perspective, we want to take what's currently a pretty fragmented sort of ecosystem and create a streamlined experience that just helps collectors come in and have an end-to-end experience that helps them enjoy what they do and kind of makes it fun and removes all of the kind of friction and removes all of the kind of boring bits of collecting, put it that way.
And I know you've been working in digital media for a long time. What's the most surprising thing that you've learned launching Fanatics Live?
I think honestly, the passion of the hobby is probably the most interesting thing. In other businesses that I've been a part of, you would set up focus groups and you would try and, find people to participate in surveys to get feedback. My inbox every single day, has emails coming in from people who are just so passionate about what they love and so passionate, therefore, about what we do that they just want to see us grow and they want to see us build a product that helps them experience their passion in a better way. And I think that has probably been the kind of biggest standout for me. I think the other thing for me that's been so interesting is just the pace in which, particularly in the US and, we expect in the UK, that the hobby is growing and moving towards this kind of online experience. See this huge growth in the overall number of collectors, but also just the depth of that engagement. So I think, if you look at the growth of the platform over the last couple of years since we launched Fanatics Live, our stats and the data that we see around engagement is just phenomenal. I think coming into the space, I think we saw that opportunity, but I think it's, probably surpassed our expectations just in terms of how much people want to engage and how passionate people are in the space.
Amazing. Well, it's been so great to talk with you today and learn about Fanatics Live. Before we wrap up, I've just got a couple of questions. Do you have any predictions for the creator economy, like where that may be in 5 years' time?
I think it's a great question. We obviously spend a lot of time looking at other platforms. We spend a lot of time talking to creators, not just in the hobby, but just more generally. And I think what we're starting to see right now is this move towards, community and how do people build community and use, entertainment as the way to build that community, but build pretty significant businesses around that. I think the ability for people to spin up businesses around their entertainment as it continues to grow, and the ability to get pretty significant distribution on these platforms has obviously been there for a while. But I think people are starting to really hone in on, I wouldn't say niches, but particular verticals where they can build a very hardcore base of fans and, charge fans to be subscribers, monetize through commerce, monetized through in person. And I think, we've seen parts of that sort of materialize over the last few years. And we've seen some creators, obviously, some of the bigger creators really take great steps into that world. But I think we will just continue to see more and more of that. I think, as I mentioned earlier on, I think, gone are the days where people are just going to kind of post a video, hope it gets a load of views and hope that they get a few pennies out the bottom from ad revenue and move towards this world where it's like, how do I build a very, very deep connection with my audience? And that audience may be smaller in terms of the number of views, but, a lot more engaged, a lot more passionate. And I think the tools and the services that help creators do that are growing rapidly. I think also, like, listen, it would be remiss not to kind of mention where AI is going with this, right? You know, as we talk about these niches, I think the ability for kind of creators to no longer need to be on-air talent, but to use, you know, generative tools and kind of use AI to create a lot more content and focus it at a niche without necessarily having to have the awkward moment of, you know, creating that first video, which is raw and badly lit and ugly, but actually create something which is highly polished and potentially without the creator ever even being on screen, right? But, you know, these digital characters that you can kind of engage with in real time, and you can become a fan of or become a part of. So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch. I mean, you know, will humans still be creators in 5 years' time? Probably, but I think we're definitely going to see a large number of kind of character-based creators emerge as well, and I'm pretty excited to see what happens there.
I agree with everything that you've said there, particularly with my core business, Electrify. We've invested into a number of these niche channels where they've got really hardcore audiences and they're still driving real great revenues and loyalty amongst the fans. One final question. If you were to give some advice to a creator looking to monetize through live commerce on the platform, what would it be?
I think find something you're really passionate about, find something that you're really knowledgeable about, find something that you want to be doing evenings, weekends, every waking moment, and go deep on that. Don't try and sell anything, right? I think, you know, you see people pop up and they decide that they want to be a creator and they want to get into live commerce, but really try and anchor that around something that you're passionate about. I think we just see huge kind of difference between those who are very passionate when they applied Beyond Fanatics Live and those who see it as a business opportunity. And I think, you know, follow your passion, and it's a lot of hard work, right? You know, going on air is draining. You know, building a business is not easy, and it's got to be something that you want to eat, sleep, and breathe every single day.
Amazing, very wise words there. Well, Nick, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and telling us about Fanatics Live and also the Flagship store in London. Recommend anyone goes down there and check it out.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ian.
Excellent. There we go. Fantastic.
Awesome. I
Thank you.
appreciate you. Thank you so
That was
much.
good. No problem
And if
at
you're
all.
ever in LA again, let me know. I'd love to see you.
I will do, definitely. Cool.
All right.
Well, thanks so much then. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.